While stressing the need for greater gender sensitization among members of the judiciary, Attorney General K.K. Venugopal said on Wednesday that improving the representation of women in the judiciary could go a long way towards a more balanced and empathetic approach in cases involving sexual violence. Venugopal was replying to a plea questioning the bail conditions imposed by the Madhya Pradesh High Court, wherein an accused was asked to get a rakhi tied by the victim as a condition for enlargement on bail. The petition, filed by 9 women lawyers led by Supreme Court advocate Aparna Bhatt, had cited orders from other high courts to highlight the non-empathetic approach of judges while dealing with cases of sexual violence. Venugopal, in his written submission, said that judges need to be trained to place themselves in the shoes of the victim of sexual violence while passing orders. They need to assess the crime as if it had been committed on a member of their own family. He pointed out to the dearth of compulsory courses in gender sensitization in law schools. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the issue of women in judiciary. Joining me on the program today are Meenakshi Lekhi, Member of Parliament Lok Sabha and Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court; Rekha Agarwal, Advocate of the Supreme Court; and Kapil Sankla, Advocate of the Supreme Court. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ms. Lekhi, let me start the program with you first. As far as women in judiciary are concerned, the Attorney General K.K. Venugopal made some very interesting observations, something that had to be said. Your thoughts on that?
I assume anyone who sits on a judicial position is aware of the sensitivity as prevailing in society, and if somebody is missing, then it's for the judiciary to take the corrective action in those cases against any such misdemeanor, whether by a judge or by a lawyer or anywhere else. End of the day, I think we all come from certain social modes and certain social backgrounds, and lawyers and judges are normally supposed to be morally more correct than others and put that legal fiber into their decision making. Now, if anyone has made out of the context comments about gender, then that literally amounts to misdemeanor and has to be handled by the authorities in that manner.
So, Kapil Sankla, let me come across to you then. You know, as a male member of the fraternity, how would you look at this issue, and, what are your thoughts?
One, I'm really thankful to the panelists who was very honest and decided that it's time not to portray every woman as an abla nari. And it's actually a welcome change to actually own up that, yes, there are difficulties, yes, it's a personal issue, and yet, yes, the society has evolved. That's one part of it. But there's also another part of it, which is the order, the Madhya Pradesh order from which the entire, argument and discussion emanates. It's very unfortunate, and I say this with utmost respect. It is very unfortunate when personal biases, and I say this with respect because judges also are human beings, but when personal biases and your personal experiences kind of color a judgment. In this case, to ask the perpetrator of a crime to tie rakhi to the victim is actually victimizing the lady once again. And that's my personal opinion. And personally speaking, and this is an issue that also requires a larger discussion, is that bail or anticipatory bail should not be decided on personal discretion completely. I understand that we as defense lawyers and criminal lawyers earn our daily bread by going to the court and arguing matters day in and day out. But there's a larger issue here, that there should be some kind of standardized formula where, it should not be that one person, when he goes to the court, manages to get bail, and the same facts another person is denied bail. And bail, even if granted, are given on such grounds, for example. So, you could probably have some kind of system where a person is educated, first-time offender, no heinous crime, no threat to the society. You give certain marks to the person, and 10-15% marks would be left to the oratory skills or the skill set of the lawyer to probably change the mind of the judge. That would actually level the playing field. That's one. It would also avoid such kind of orders coming to fore where the Honorable Supreme Court has now to step in and probably protect and safeguard the reputation of the High Court as well as the whole judicial mechanism. The second part is, it is true that when a lady lawyer appears in the court or there is a lady judicial member, at times there is certain section of the society, it could be other lawyers, it could be colleagues, it could be court staff, it could be police officers, who probably take that female judicial officer or the lawyer granted, for the lack of a better word. Probably thinking the fact that their masculinity might somehow, threaten, coerce, or somehow pressurize the lady member of the bar or the or judiciary, which is unfortunate. And that is something, as a male member, I've seen this for more than 2 decades, that this does happen. We've seen some brilliant law. And the thing about lady judicial members is that when they're imparting justice, and justice is hard, law is tough. When they're imparting justice, they also empathize with the victims or with the parties, and empathy brings out a more pleasing justice, something which is more acceptable, where you're connected. It's not just from the mind. But we've noticed that over 6 months and 1 year, we've seen those judges kind of regress because of the pressure that they face from either the male members of the same society, or even from their colleagues. It could be out of jealousy, out of whatever. I won't say why, but it has improved in last couple of years. I think the sheer magnitude of lady lawyers and judicial members has substantially increased, though the numbers are very, very short. I've been told there are only 17 lady senior lawyers against 403 senior lawyers, male members. I've been told that there are only 2 female judges in the Honorable Supreme Court, while there are 32 male judges. So the number has to change, that's for sure. But the error does not lie from the fact that there is some kind of negativity or shades of darkness when it comes to female members, either litigants or colleagues or judicial members, but it comes from the arbitrariness and the sheer discretion while granting bail. And
Right.
that is something that needs to be looked into.
Absolutely.
That's
All
what
right.
my
So-
personal, yes.
Sure, points taken. Let me take the points that you're making forward with Rekha Agarwal. Now, if you look at it from the other side of the coin as well, it gives the victim a sense of security, a sense of faith, and, a sense of just believing that the other person sitting across the table, if she is a woman, it maybe just brings a sense of calm as well as far as the victim is concerned. Would you say that would be the case, Rekha ji?
I would fully agree with that, Frank. And in this perspective, I would like to mention about a case of 1995. And this is that rather famous, or if I may say infamous case of Rupan Deol Bajaj versus KPS Gill. A very well publicized case where Rupan Deol Bajaj had dragged Mr. KPS Gill to the court, for a case of outraging her modesty. And, when the matter was heard in the court, in the Honorable Supreme Court, Rupan Deol Bajaj, the complainant in that matter, she asked her counsel, Ms. Indra Jaising, who was representing her, that I hope my case is going to be heard by a lady judge. And Ms. Jaising said, no, not at all. She said, why? She said, because there's no lady judge in the Supreme Court. So I guess that speaks for itself, that when it is a case of, pertaining to a sexual outrage case against a woman, she would definitely be more comfortable if the person who's on the other side of the bench, that is the honorable judge, is a lady, lady judge. That gives a certain sense of calm, a certain sense of confidence, and the complainant is more at ease. That comes very naturally. There's a natural affinity to a person of your own sex. So I guess that, be that as it may, I do think that, as of now, in the context of the latest, Supreme Court judgment, where the AG has commented upon the lack of sensitivity or the lack of gender sensitization in the higher echelons of the judiciary, I do think that there is a great need of gender sensitization, first of all, in the backdrop of the order which has been passed, where a victim of, of sexual crime, she has been made the victim herself, yet again, as Kapil rightly said, that here the perpetrator of the crime has been told to go and tie a rakhi on her wrist, as if that kind of puts everything under the carpet, and now she becomes his sister and he becomes a brother, and let us close the case at that. And now he deserves anticipatory bail because, he's tied a rakhi and he's not going to repeat this offense again.
And
I
you
think
know,
that
sorry to interrupt, Rekha ji, but and if he does repeat it, it becomes even worse. It's incest.
it absolutely becomes. I mean, it is just you cannot even imagine a person committing that kind of an offense again. So I think that in that backdrop, I do think that there is a great need of sensitization of the judges, especially in the higher echelons of the judiciary, and we need more female judges, as the AG rightly remarked. After Justice Bhanumati has retired in July 2020, there are only 2 judges in the Supreme Court. And if you look at the other high courts, I think there should be about 8 to 10. And I think the problem lies in the fact, if I may go into that aspect also, that the problem lies in the appointment of the lady judges, to the higher posts in the High Court and the Supreme Court, because the collegium system is there, and that collegium system is opaque. As far as the lower judiciary is concerned, which Ms. Meenakshi Lekhi also commented about, probably at that level it becomes easier for the lady judges to get up to secure a place in the lower judiciary, because it is a competitive exam and they're probably able to get through it. But and of course along with that they get a security of a fixed, probably a 10 to 5 job and a fixed salary, and that is what appeals to them. But what happens when you come to the High Court, or when you think of the Supreme Court, where it is not your own competence which counts, but the collegium system plays a very important role. And I think that we do need to do a little bit of more soul searching and be more transparent and look at women not as objects, who can, after all, even a constitution, on one hand, we talk about Article 14, which ensures equality for both the sexes. And Article 15 also says that this is high time that positive discrimination should be exercised, so that the role of women in society is, bettered in whatever
Right.
way it can be. So, Frank,
Absolutely.
I think that we should do a relook and make sure that we get more judges in the High Court and the Supreme Court.
Do you also
Simply-
believe at some level, if you look at the sanction strength of the Supreme Court, 34 judges in all, but there are only 2 female judges. There's not a single, there hasn't been a single Chief Justice of India who has been a woman. How do we correct that? If you look at the population of this country, it's fair to say that the representation or the ratio is 1:1 as far as women and men are concerned. But if you look at the judiciary, that isn't the case. How do we change that?
You cannot, I think in coming times it will change, and I will share one experience with you, and that is my personal experience, and I believe Rekha would agree with me. When I joined the profession, and there were a batch of say 30 people who joined the profession, and finally by the time I am at the position I am, there would be 10, not more than 10 women from my batch who have continued with the profession. Now, if women are not going to join the profession, are not going to make their careers out of it, you cannot expect those women to reach the highest possible positions in the profession and not work hard towards those positions. So you have to see the ratio of women who finally are retained in the profession. A whole lot of them will turn towards, general counsels for firms, or get married and just get out of the profession completely, or become teachers and professors and so on and so forth. Finally, to reach the position in judiciary, that many women have to continue with the profession itself. That's number one. And now the times have changed. So from past couple of years, we are seeing a surge of women who are continuing in the profession and are joining profession in greater numbers. And I remember the times when I joined the profession, hardly anyone from that time has continued in the profession who passed out with me from the same batch. So I think coming times, we will see that greater differential which exists today will change in favor of women. And if we keep those considerations in mind, batch of people who passed out in 1980 or 82, 84 are the people who are sitting in Supreme Court right now. Now, batch of 80, how many women have continued in the profession? How many finally sustained? Based on the number of retention, how many have made it to judiciary is what you need to determine, and you'll be shocked to see the numbers. Now, by the time my batch came, which was 1990, look at the numbers. And now if you go beyond 2000, maybe 10 years, a decade would have changed larger numbers, and greater number of women would have retained the retention of the profession to retain women and making it safer, efficient, and competitive. Greater number of women are there. That change you will see in coming years. As of now, I can definitely say people who passed out during the decade of 80 or 80s was still less than 90s, as I am a 1990 pass out. And when I look around, women who passed out with me have all disappeared from the profession, and very few are there in the profession. So I think we have to give that due consideration, because to be able to sustain the profession and to remain a lawyer as a legal professional is not easy. It is a very insecure job. You do not know where your next bread and butter is going to come from, whether you're
Right.
going to be engaged or not going to be engaged. So all those things are very, very comparative. And based on that, I think women in Supreme Court have done very, very well. And women in higher judiciary or any judicial position, in lower judiciary to higher judiciary, and they join lower judiciary because, again, it's a sense of security that you have a job, you have a 10 to 5 job, and you can study at home, and you can manage your life in a more orderly fashion. But when you are in a profession, there is complete disorder in life. You may be working on odd hours, and you may have no work for 1 month, and you have to sustain yourself through those times, which is very hard for women unless there is a support system and structure behind you.
Absolutely. And my final question before I let you go, as far as this profession is concerned, you're an accomplished advocate yourself. You've been in the business for quite some time. And, do you also believe that it is that much more difficult for women to make it big in this profession? And is it also a societal thing?
I don't think it's a societal thing. I think our society is very receptive. I do not think I was ever judged on my gender. I started as a tax lawyer and a criminal lawyer. Now, it is as hard as it could get, because those were the branches which were considered to be pretty much male dominated. And I do not think I was ever judged on my gender. Your performance counts and your ability counts, and our society, as the impression is made out to be, is very, very different. If you can get a person out on bail, that's what matters. They don't care whether you are a man or a woman. If a company is defrauded someone, all the criminal director is looking at how to get out of tax liability, and if you are smart enough to bring it under some clause, they'll be happy. Excise, customs, those are the kind of things I've done in my life. And I'm very happy to announce and make this statement that it is not so much as societal thing, but more as a professional thing, and the rigor of profession are immense. It's a very, very competitive profession. It's a tough profession. It's a very demanding profession, and demanding on every front, because I laughingly say that a lawyer, a man or a woman, does not have any insurance of any kind. You have to pay for every penny to sustain yourself in the profession. You have to manage several lives who are dependent on you, not just your family, but your munshi, your clerks, your day-to-day living expense, your driving, your maintaining an office, maintaining appearances. It's a tough call overall, and that tough call makes it unsustainable, because the very nature of profession is very, very aggressive and competitive at every level. And thus, sometimes women find it very, very hard uh, because there could be marriage, there could be non-availability to spouse, there could be children, there could be their education. Certain career goals are normally in conflict with families' well-being. So, at times, women of their own adopt different ways of life, and it's not because they are less competent, but the nature of life is such that until unless you have a greater support, a family support structure, etc., it becomes very, very hard to sustain. And managing your office, the paraphernalia of an office, the books, the computers, the search engines, everything is expensive. So you need to have certain level of income to sustain that kind of lifestyle also.
So since we are here then, let's talk about how do we remedy the situation and what needs to be done and what's the best way forward. Kapil Sankla, the AG has made some suggestions about, probably bringing in a chapter or a course on gender sensitivity in law school. Do you think that could go a long way in trying to rectify the problem at hand? Also, maybe a refresher program or a course as a whole for those who are already in the system about gender sensitization. Will that help?
See, in the light of the judgment that we're talking about, you have to understand that it is actually not an issue of gender sensitization. It is an issue of a discretion of the court while granting bail or anticipatory bail. As far as sensitization is concerned, I can assure you that our High Court, Supreme Court, our trial courts give as much respect as is possible, irrespective of the sexes, but to the knowledge, the intellect, the power of oratory skills of a counsel. So it doesn't really matter whether you're male or female. Life has changed in last couple of years. The respect has come. There are brilliant lawyers on the criminal side who are females. There are brilliant lawyers on the constitutional side who are females. They're given respect and matters not because they're female or male, but because of their oratory, as I said, their skill sets, etc. What is really required? One, probably if sensitization is required, it would be required in the police forces. That is very important. Secondly, I really think that when it comes to matters where discretion is involved, in any organization for that matter, that discretion should have some kind of checks or some kind of test. When you talk about collegium system, as they said that it's opaque, it needs to open up, there needs to be certain checks. What could be done is, system of probably marking, grading, or whatever, even when you grant bail or any other discretionary relief. So that would stop the personal biases, that would stop probably colored experiences of the person who's deciding, come in the way of more open, opaque, proper orders, which are in light and in tune of the Honorable Supreme Court's judgments, etc. That's my personal opinion.
Right. Okay. So, Rekha Agarwal, what's the best way forward? What do we need to do in the immediate near future? Of course, yes, like the other panelists have said, times are changing. We can expect something to happen on the positive, something positive to happen in probably a couple of years or in a few years' time. But what needs to be done in the immediate near future?
I think in the immediate near future, since we are talking about the collegium system should become more open. They should, with their eyes wide open, look around to see that how many, competent lady lawyers are there who could probably be elevated to the senior advocate's position. And there are very few designated senior lady advocates in the High Court as well as in the Supreme Court. So they should be judged not just because they're females and more weightage should be given to them, but yes, if they're meritorious and they're capable, then first of all, make more appointments as senior judges, and thereafter increase the number of direct appointments to the High Court as well as to the Supreme Court. In fact, Frank, till date we do not have. We've never had a Chief Justice, a lady Chief Justice of the Honorable Supreme Court. So why shouldn't that be done? And I think that that would send a message to the world at large, to the litigants, that yes, there is a more empathetic figure who's on the other side. And I think that would be the best way forward to start appointment of High Court, competent High Court lawyers as High Court judges, as well as to the Supreme Court. I think the direct appointment, though in the Supreme Court, there is no direct appointment to come from the High Court to the Supreme Court, but that would be one step forward. And so the lower court judges, very few lower court judges actually make it to the Supreme Court. That is another thing that has to be looked into, because they retire by the time, the age of retirement comes by the time they reach the Supreme Court. So that would probably forward to it.
Okay, I've got about 1 minute left on the program. So quick concluding remarks from both my panelists in 30 seconds each on the program. Starting first with you, Kapil Sankla.
As I've said, that there is a lot of empathy when it comes to a female judicial officer. We have to respect that. There are instances where the male members, either of judiciary, from police, or a legal fraternity, might think of bearing down on them. But it is not as bad as it has been portrayed. And times are changing. We actually need to sit down and look at more judicially open orders, clear orders, opaque orders, and systems have to be put in place when it comes to grant of bails.
Rekha Agarwal, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Women are as equal, are equal to men.